The first time my own son introduced me as the burden, I was standing less than 10 feet away. He didn't know I could hear him. "We can't keep doing this," he sighed to his sister while pushing my wheelchair into the hospital corridor. "Dad's accident ruined everything. He's basically our responsibility now." His sister didn't even hesitate. "He's not really Dad anymore." Those 6 words hurt more than the crash that shattered my spine. I smiled when they turned around because I refused to let them see me break. But at that exact moment, I made one quiet promise to myself. If my children believed my life was over, they were about to learn they had underestimated the wrong man. My name is Thomas. I'm 68 years old, and before the accident, everyone in town knew me as the man who never stopped working. I built a successful construction company from nothing. No inheritance. No rich parents. No lucky breaks. Just 18-hour days, sore muscles, and a promise I made to my late wife, Margaret. I'll make sure our children never struggle. I kept that promise. My son Daniel graduated debt-free. My daughter Rebecca received a beautiful wedding paid entirely by me. When Daniel wanted to start a business that eventually failed, I quietly covered every loan. When Rebecca and her husband couldn't afford a larger home after their 3rd child, I bought it for them. Every Christmas, every birthday, every emergency, Dad always fixed everything. I wasn't just their father. I was their safety net. Looking back now, maybe that was my biggest mistake. Because people often confuse generosity with obligation. Margaret used to warn me, "Tom, one day they'll expect it instead of appreciating it." I'd laugh and kiss her forehead. "They're good kids." She'd smile sadly. "I hope you're right." She passed away 8 years before the accident. Sometimes I wonder if she already saw what I refused to. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday. A delivery truck ignored a red light. I remember headlights, screeching tires, then darkness. When I woke up 3 days later, the doctor spoke gently. "Mr. Harrison, the damage to your spine is permanent." I couldn't feel my legs. Everything changed in one sentence. At first, Daniel and Rebecca visited every day. They brought flowers, held my hand, told me we'd get through this together. "I'll always take care of you, Dad," Daniel promised. Rebecca cried. "We're family." For a little while, I believed them. Then reality arrived. Physical therapy was expensive. I couldn't run the construction company anymore. I hired professionals to manage it while I recovered, but rumors spread that I would never return. Suddenly, my children weren't visiting every day, then every other day, then once a week. Eventually, only when they needed something. "Dad," Daniel said one afternoon, "since you're not working anymore, maybe you should sell the company. It's still profitable, but you can't manage it. I already have managers." He frowned. "Think about the future." Funny, whenever someone says they're thinking about your future, they're usually thinking about their own. A month later, Rebecca arrived carrying brochures. "These retirement communities are beautiful." I looked at the smiling elderly couples on the cover. "You want me to move? It's practical. I've lived in this house for 40 years. You don't need such a big place." I stared at her. "This is where your mother died." She looked uncomfortable. "We all have to move on eventually." Move on. From the house I built with my own hands. From the memories that kept me alive. That night, I cried for the first time since losing the use of my legs. Not because I was disabled, because my children had stopped seeing me as their father. I had become an inconvenience. Things became worse after Daniel discovered the value of my estate. One evening, he walked into my study without knocking. I spoke to an accountant. "About what?" "Your assets." I slowly closed the book I was reading. "You did what?" "We're just planning ahead." We, Rebecca and I, planning ahead. I wasn't dead, yet they were already dividing my life. "The house alone is worth nearly £2 million, Daniel said casually. "The company even more." Rebecca smiled. "Mom would have wanted everything to stay in the family." I looked from one face to the other. Neither of them asked how I felt. Neither asked whether I needed anything. Only what they would eventually receive. That's when Daniel made the demand that changed everything. "You should transfer ownership now." I blinked. "What? So probate won't be complicated?" Rebecca nodded enthusiastically. "It'll save taxes too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you want me to give away everything while I'm still alive? You won't be using most of it anyway. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Daniel leaned closer. If you really love us. There was emotional blackmail. You'll sign. I looked at my son's outstretched hand. The same hand I'd held when he learned to walk. Now I was reaching for everything I'd spent 50 years building. I quietly said one word. No. His face changed instantly. The caring son disappeared. You become selfish. Rebecca folded her arms. Mom would have never done this. You don't get to speak for your mother. Daniel slammed his fist onto my desk. Fine. Then he said something I'll never forget. If you're going to make this difficult, don't expect us to keep sacrificing our lives for you. They walked out together. The next morning my phone didn't ring. Not once. The following Sunday, they skipped our usual family lunch. Then they stopped answering my calls. My grandchildren suddenly became too busy. Birthdays passed. Holidays passed. Silence. Until 3 months later, when Daniel returned with legal documents. I found the perfect nursing facility. He placed the paperwork in front of me. You'll be happier there. No, you can't stay here forever. I said no. Rebecca looked around my living room. Honestly, this house is wasted on one old man. One old man. Not dad. Not father. Just one old man. I realized then that the accident hadn't taken away my family. It had simply revealed who they truly were. I smiled. Not because I was happy. Because for the first time, I finally knew exactly what I needed to do. The smile on my face confused both of my children. Daniel frowned. What's so funny? I folded the nursing home brochures and carefully placed them back on the coffee table. Nothing. Rebecca crossed her arms. Then why are you smiling? Because I've finally made my decision. For the first time in months, they smiled back. They thought I had given in. They thought I was finally going to sign everything over. If only they knew. I'll have my solicitor handle everything, I said calmly. Daniel looked relieved. See? That's all we wanted. No arguments. No stress. I simply nodded. Exactly. They left my house happier than they'd been since my accident. The moment the front door closed, I picked up my phone. I wasn't calling the nursing home. I was calling my solicitor, James Whitmore, a man who had helped me build my business from the very beginning. He answered on the second ring. Thomas, how are you holding up? I've never been clearer. What happened? My children just tried to move me into a nursing home so they could get my house. There was a long silence. Finally, James sighed. I was afraid this day would come. So was Margaret. You remember what she asked me years ago? Of course I remembered. After Margaret became ill, she had asked James to quietly prepare an emergency estate plan in case our children ever valued money more than family. At the time, I laughed and told her she was worrying for nothing. Now I realized she had been wiser than both of us. I want to activate it, I said. James didn't hesitate. I'll be at your house tomorrow morning. The next week became one of the busiest weeks of my life. Every document was reviewed. Every asset was transferred exactly as I instructed. The construction company was placed into a charitable trust that would provide apprenticeships for young people who couldn't afford college. Scholarships were created in Margaret's name. A large portion of my savings was donated to the rehabilitation hospital that had helped me learn to live after the accident. The nurses who had treated me with kindness each received generous bonuses through the trust. And my house, the house my children wanted so badly, will be sold after my death. Every penny would fund housing for injured veterans and disabled workers trying to rebuild their lives. James looked up from the paperwork. Are you absolutely certain? I smiled. For the first time in months. Only one sentence remained. Daniel and Rebecca would each receive exactly £1. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted them to understand that love could never be measured by inheritance. A month later, I invited the entire family to dinner. For the first time in almost a year, everyone accepted immediately. Daniel arrived wearing an expensive suit. Rebecca brought flowers she clearly bought at the last minute. Even my grandchildren came, though they barely recognized the man they once called Grandpa. Dinner felt painfully fake. So, Dad, Daniel said with an overly cheerful smile, have you thought more about the future? I have. Rebecca leaned forward. We're only trying to help. I know. Daniel exchanged a quick glance with his sister. He thought victory was seconds away. Then I stood, or rather, adjusted myself in my wheelchair, and looked toward James, who had quietly entered the room carrying a folder. My solicitor is here because I'd like everyone to hear my decision together. Daniel grinned. Perfect. James opened the folder. His voice remained calm and professional. Mr. Harrison has legally updated his final estate. Rebecca squeezed Daniel's arm. Neither of them noticed my grandchildren watching silently. James continued. The construction company will become the Margaret Harrison Foundation. Daniel's smile disappeared. What? The house will be sold to fund housing for disabled workers and veterans. Rebecca blinked. Excuse me. The investment accounts have been donated to various charities and educational programs. Daniel suddenly stood. No. James continued reading. To Daniel Harrison. Daniel interrupted. Finally, Mr. Harrison leaves the sum of £1. The room froze. James turned another page. To Rebecca Harrison. She whispered, this isn't funny. Mr. Harrison leaves the sum of £1. Silence. Absolute silence. Daniel's face turned bright red. You can't do this. I already have. Rebecca burst into tears. You chose strangers over your own children. I looked directly into her eyes. No, I chose people who still know the difference between love and greed. Daniel slammed both hands onto the dining table. We're your family. I answered quietly. Were you? When I was learning to use a wheelchair. When I cried myself to sleep. When you stopped calling me Dad. Neither of them spoke. I continued. You call me a burden. Rebecca covered her mouth. I heard every word. Daniel looked away. I didn't mean. You meant every syllable. My oldest grandson slowly stood from his chair. He looked at his father. Dad, the room became even quieter. Did you really call Grandpa Burden? Daniel couldn't answer. My grandson turned toward me. I'm sorry. Those two words meant more than any inheritance ever could. News spread through the family within days. Relatives who had ignored me suddenly started calling. Some criticized me. Others quietly admitted I had done the right thing. Then something unexpected happened. The local newspaper published a story about the Margaret Harrison Foundation. It explained how dozens of apprentices would receive free training every year. How disabled workers would receive accessible housing. How scholarships would honor my wife's memory. People praised the decision. Letters arrived every week from families whose lives had already been changed. One afternoon, as I left the rehabilitation center, a young man rolled beside my wheelchair. I just wanted to thank you. For what? I lost my legs in an accident 2 years ago. He smiled. Your foundation paid for my training. I'm starting work next Monday. I felt tears fill my eyes. In that single moment, I realized my life's work hadn't ended with my accident. It had simply found a greater purpose. Months later, Daniel and Rebecca asked to meet me. They looked different, older, humbler. Daniel spoke first. We're sorry. Rebecca cried openly. We cared more about what you'd leave us than the fact we almost lost you. I believe they regretted what they had done. But regret doesn't erase choices. I forgive you, I said softly. Their faces brightened. Then I added, but forgiveness isn't the same as undoing consequences. Neither argued. For the first time in years, they simply listened. Today, my wheelchair still reminds me of the accident every morning. But it also reminds me of something else. The crash didn't destroy my life. It exposed the people who loved me only when I was useful. And it showed me that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, compassion, and respect. My children lost an inheritance worth millions because they forgot one simple truth. A father's greatest gift isn't his money. It's his love. The moment they treated that love like an entitlement instead of a blessing, they lost both. As for me, I may never walk again. But every time I see another young apprentice begin a career, another disabled family receive a home, or another scholarship awarded in Margaret's name, I know I made the right decision. And for the first time since the accident, I no longer felt like a burden. I felt free.